Victoria's hand trembled imperceptibly as she adjusted her pearl necklace in front of the mirror. 8 months of pregnancy had transformed her body in ways she never imagined, but it wasn't the reflection of her rounded curves that made her hesitate. It was the memory of the conversation she had overheard 3 days ago, hidden behind the ajar door of Gregory's, her husband's, office. "You can't be serious." Margaret's voice, Victoria's best friend for 15 years, sounded incredulous over the phone. "The Charleston Children's Hospital Charity Gala is the event of the year. Everyone expects to see both of you. Say she's indisposed. Flu, morning sickness, anything." Gregory had replied with that coldness Victoria had been noticing in recent months. "I'm not parading around with her in that state. I look like I'm married to a whale." The words had pierced her heart like shards of glass. Victoria remained paralyzed in the hallway, one hand instinctively protecting the belly where her child moved. The same man who had courted her with poems and promises of eternal love now reduced her to an object of shame. That Saturday morning, as the golden September light streamed through the panoramic windows of their Battery Street mansion, Victoria watched Gregory descend the stairs in his Armani tuxedo. He adjusted his shirt cuffs with precise movements, without looking in her direction. "Don't wait up for me." He picked up the Mercedes keys. "These events usually run late." "Gregory." Victoria descended the last steps carefully, her hand sliding along the mahogany banister. "Can we talk about tonight?" He finally faced her, and Victoria saw something worse than anger in his eyes. Indifference. "There's nothing to talk about. You need rest. The doctor recommended it, remember?" A lie. Dr. Harrison had never said such a thing. On the contrary, he had encouraged Victoria to maintain her social activities as long as she felt comfortable. "I'm feeling fine. I'd love to go with you to the gala. We worked together on this fundraising campaign all year." Gregory sighed impatiently. "Victoria, be sensible. You can barely tie your own shoes. How are you going to manage an entire evening in high heels, making small talk with hundreds of people?" Before she could answer, the doorbell rang. Gregory opened the door, revealing a woman Victoria immediately recognized from photos in his office. Cassandra Whitmore, the new marketing manager at Gregory's company. Perfectly brushed blonde hair, a slender body encased in a red silk dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Good morning." Cassandra entered with excessive familiarity, her eyes briefly skimming over Victoria before fixing on Gregory. "I hope I'm not late." Punctual as always. Gregory smiled in a way Victoria hadn't seen in months. "Cassandra has kindly agreed to accompany me to the event. We need someone from the company to represent our business interests." Victoria felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "You're going together." It wasn't a question, but Gregory answered anyway. "It's networking, darling. You'd understand if you were still involved with the business." There was a tone of censure in his voice, as if pregnancy were a hobby Victoria had chosen at the expense of real responsibilities. Cassandra offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You must be so uncomfortable at this stage. My sister could barely get out of bed in her 8th month. It's very brave of you to prioritize rest." The words were pure sugar, but Victoria had tasted the venom underneath. She watched helplessly as Gregory guided Cassandra out, his hand resting lightly on her back, exactly where it used to rest on Victoria's. When the door closed, the silence of the 12-room house became deafening. Victoria walked to the living room, her hands trembling as she picked up the phone. She dialed without thinking. "Vic, I thought you'd be getting ready for tonight." Margaret's warm voice brought immediate tears to Victoria's eyes. "He went with someone else." The words came out choked. "With Cassandra Whitmore. He said I shouldn't go, that I need rest." A heavy silence filled the line before Margaret exploded. "That petty coward. Vic, you have to go to this event. You need to show him and all of Charleston that you won't hide." "Look at me, Maggie." Victoria ran her hand over her prominent belly. "He's right. I've lost my elegance. I barely recognize my own body. Stop that right now! Margaret's voice was firm, almost angry. You're carrying a life. You are more beautiful and powerful than you've ever been. And I'm going to prove it to you. Put on your robe and wait for me. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Margaret hung up before Victoria could protest. She sank into the velvet sofa, feeling the baby kick against her ribs as if trying to encourage her. Her mind wandered to 6 months ago, when Gregory still looked at her with adoration, when his hands caressed her belly with reverence, and he whispered plans about the future. What had changed? When exactly had love turned into revulsion? Victoria got up with difficulty and walked to the office she used to share with Gregory. The walls were lined with photos from their 9 years together, their wedding at a California winery, trips to Europe, the inauguration of the charity foundation they had created for disadvantaged children. In every photo, Gregory looked at her as if she were the only person in the world. When had that look died? She opened the bottom drawer of the desk, where she kept the foundation's documents. Victoria had spent the last 3 years managing every aspect of the organization, while Gregory handled the corporate side and fundraising. Together they had raised over $8 million to build 3 community centers in underserved neighborhoods of Charleston. Her fingers slid through the papers until they found what she was looking for, the foundation's account statement. But something was wrong. The numbers didn't add up. There should have been 2. $3 million available for the new maternity center project, but the account showed only $200,000. Victoria's heart raced. She began to rummage through other documents, finding transfers she hadn't authorized, expenses she didn't recognize. All signed by Gregory as co-director of the foundation. A movement at the entrance made her look up. Margaret was there, accompanied by 3 people: Pierre, the renowned stylist who dressed celebrities in Charleston, Dominique, a makeup artist for the stars, and someone Victoria didn't expect to see, Marcus Chen, her personal lawyer. Marcus? Victoria stood up confused. What are you doing here? The lawyer entered with a briefcase under his arm, his usually friendly face serious. Margaret called me and told me what's going on. But before we talk about that, I need to show you something I discovered this week. He placed the briefcase on the table, revealing photos. Victoria felt the world spin. They were images of Gregory and Cassandra in unequivocally intimate situations, dining in romantic restaurants, entering a Savannah hotel together, their hands intertwined as they walked along the beach. How long has this been going on? Victoria's voice came out as a whisper. 4 months, from what I've been able to ascertain. Marcus hesitated. But there's more, Victoria. I found irregularities in the foundation's finances. Gregory has been embezzling funds. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with brutal clarity. The growing coldness, the frequent absences, the sudden shame of her pregnancy. Gregory wasn't just having an affair. He was stealing from her and the children they had sworn to help. Victoria took a deep breath, feeling something new ignite within her. It wasn't just anger or hurt, but an iron determination she never knew she possessed. She looked at Margaret, then at the team her friend had brought. How long do you need to transform me into the most stunning woman Charleston has ever seen? Pierre smiled, his eyes gleaming with the challenge. Give me 3 hours, and I'll make Gregory regret every second he ever doubted you. Victoria had never imagined the transformation could be so profound. As Pierre adjusted the last layers of fabric around her body, she watched her reflection in the full-length mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. The dress was a masterpiece in midnight blue silk, designed specifically to celebrate, not hide, her pregnancy. The fabric flowed like water around her curves, with silver embroidery that caught the light with every movement. The elegant neckline highlighted her shoulders and décolletage, while the wide skirt cascaded to the floor, creating a majestic and regal silhouette. Perfect. Pierre stepped back, admiring his work with visible satisfaction. You look like a Renaissance fertility goddess. Gregory will choke on his own tongue when he sees you. Dominique finished the makeup with delicate touches, emphasizing Victoria's green eyes with bronze and gold eyeshadows. Her brown hair was pulled back into a low, elegant chignon, with a few loose strands framing her face purposefully. Ready? Dominique put away her brushes. Now you need to promise me you'll walk into that ballroom as if you own the place. Victoria touched the diamond necklace Margaret had insisted she wear, a family heirloom that rarely left the safe deposit box. Her hand still trembled slightly, not from nervousness, but from a new energy pulsing through her veins. Anger and determination mingled in equal measure. Marcus cleared his throat, bringing the attention back to the documents scattered on the table. Victoria, we need to discuss what you want to do about the financial discoveries. I have enough evidence to open a case against Gregory, both criminal and civil. The mention of her husband's name brought back the raw reality of the situation. Victoria walked to the window, watching the sun begin to set over Charleston Harbor. Boats swayed gently on the water, oblivious to the human drama unfolding in the mansion. How much did he embezzle? She asked without turning. Just over $2 million over the past 18 months. Transfers small enough not to raise immediate red flags, but consistent. He's smart. He covered his tracks well, but not well enough. Victoria closed her eyes. $2 million that should have built the maternity center for underprivileged mothers. $2 million she had helped raise, event after event, dinner after dinner, speaking with donors and writing proposals late into the night. Where did the money go? Marcus hesitated before answering. An offshore account in the Cayman Islands, in the name of a shell company. I'm still tracing it, but I believe it's a fund Gregory is setting up for, well, for a new life. The words hung in the air like a sentence. A new life, with Cassandra presumably. While Victoria raised her child alone, Gregory planned his future with another woman using money stolen from needy children. He'll be at the gala tonight. Victoria turned, her voice now firm and cold. With her by his side, introducing Cassandra as if she were his life partner, while everyone believes I'm at home, too sick to attend. Margaret approached, placing a hand on her friend's shoulder. And that's exactly why you're going to show up and reveal the truth. Not about the affair, not about the money yet, but about who you really are. Let Charleston see the strength you possess. Victoria looked again at her reflection. The woman in the mirror wasn't the same one Gregory had left behind that morning. There was power in that figure, a dignity that pregnancy hadn't diminished, but amplified. I want to do more than just show up. Victoria walked back to the table where the documents were scattered. Marcus, that account my father set up for me when he passed away. How much is available? The lawyer consulted his mental files. Around $7 million, after this quarter's investments. Why? A slow smile formed on Victoria's lips. Because I'm going to make a donation tonight, $5 million to the foundation, specifically designated for the maternity center. In front of everyone, dedicated to my unborn child. The silence that followed was broken by Margaret letting out an incredulous laugh. You're a genius, a brilliant, vengeful genius. It's not revenge. Victoria touched her belly, feeling the baby stir as if approving the plan. It's justice. It's ensuring that the project we dreamed of happens, regardless of what Gregory did. And yes, it's also showing him that I don't need him to make a difference, that I never did. Marcus frantically made notes. I'll prepare the documents for the transfer. Do you want to announce it publicly? I want to go on stage during the donor presentation and make the announcement personally. Can you arrange that? Considering you're a co-founder of the beneficiary organization and are about to become the largest individual donor of the night, I think I can arrange that. Marcus smiled, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. The next 2 hours passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Marcus made calls, organizing legal details and coordinating with the event organizers. Margaret helped Victoria practice her walk in the modified high-heeled shoes Pierre had provided, designed for comfort without sacrificing elegance. Dominique made final touch-ups to her makeup, ensuring Victoria could face the bright lights of the ballroom without looking exhausted. When the clock struck 7, a black car waited at the mansion's entrance. Not Gregory's Mercedes, but a limousine Margaret had rented specifically for the occasion. "You deserve an entrance fit for a queen," her friend had said firmly. As Victoria descended the front steps of her home, the chauffeur opened the door with a respectful bow. The limousine's interior was luxurious and spacious, perfect for accommodating her dress without creasing it. Margaret entered behind her, as did Marcus, who carried a leather brief containing all the necessary documents for the evening's announcement. "Are you sure about this?" Margaret asked as the car began to move. "Once you cross those doors, there's no turning back. Gregory will know you've found out, that you're no longer the compliant wife he imagines he can ignore." Victoria looked out the window, watching Charleston pass in a blur of lights and history. This city had been her home her entire life. She knew every street, every square, every secret whispered in the elite social circles. And those same circles were about to witness something that would be talked about for years. "I'm absolutely sure." Her hand rested protectively on her belly. "I'm not just doing this for myself. I'm doing it for my son. He deserves to grow up seeing his mother with dignity, not hidden away like a shameful secret. And the children our foundation serves deserve the maternity center we promised." The car proceeded down Broad Street, past illuminated historic mansions and perfectly manicured gardens. Victoria recognized several of the addresses, homes of friends and acquaintances who would be at the event. How many of them had noticed Gregory's increasing absence from family functions? How many suspected the truth but chose the convenient silence of polite society? "Did Gregory mention you'd arrived?" Marcus asked, checking his phone. "They arrived 40 minutes ago. He posted a photo with Cassandra at the main entrance. She's wearing a red dress." Victoria didn't ask to see the photo. She didn't need to. She could perfectly imagine it. Gregory in his impeccable tuxedo, Cassandra radiant by his side, both smiling for the cameras like the perfect couple, while his pregnant wife supposedly languished at home. The limousine turned onto Meeting Street, approaching the historic Charleston Hotel, where the gala was held every year. Victoria could see the lights, hear the distant murmur of the crowd, feel the energy of the most important event of the social season. Her heart quickened, but not from fear. It was anticipation. There was something liberating in knowing the truth, in having concrete proof of the betrayal and theft. She no longer needed to question her sanity or blame herself for Gregory's changes. The fault had never been hers. 2 minutes, the chauffeur announced. Margaret took Victoria's hand, squeezing it tightly. "You're the strongest woman I know. You always have been. You were just waiting for the right moment to realize it." Victoria returned the squeeze, grateful for the friendship that had remained constant when everything else in her life was falling apart. She looked once more at her reflection in the dark car window. The woman staring back was a warrior dressed in silk and diamonds, ready to reclaim her place and her dignity. The limousine stopped in front of the main entrance. The chauffeur exited and walked to open the door. Victoria took a deep breath, feeling her son kick as if encouraging her. It was time to show Charleston, Gregory, and most importantly herself, what she was truly capable of. The limousine remained still for a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. Victoria could hear the murmur of the crowd outside, the sound of laughter and animated conversation mingling with the soft music escaping through the open doors of the ballroom. Her heart pounded, but there was a clarity in her mind she hadn't experienced in months. "Ready?" Margaret held her hand once more, her eyes conveying encouragement and admiration in equal measure. Victoria nodded, and the chauffeur finally opened the door. Charleston's night air enveloped her, bringing with it the characteristic scent of magnolias blooming in the hotel gardens. She accepted the chauffeur's outstretched hand and emerged from the limousine with a grace that surprised even herself. The movement drew immediate attention. People chatting near the entrance stopped mid-sentence, eyes turning to the majestic figure emerging. Victoria recognized familiar faces, friends and acquaintances from years of social events. She saw surprise, admiration, and something that looked very much like shame cross the faces of some who had surely questioned her absence earlier. Eleanor Hastings, chairwoman of the gala's organizing committee, was the first to approach. Her eyes were wide with shock, but she quickly recomposed her expression into a warm smile. "Victoria, my goodness, you look absolutely radiant." Eleanor embraced her carefully, mindful of her prominent belly. "Gregory mentioned you were indisposed. I'm so glad you were able to make it." Victoria noticed the hesitation in Eleanor's voice, the way her eyes quickly scanned the room, likely looking for Gregory. The truth was beginning to dawn on the older woman, Victoria could see. "I'm feeling wonderful, actually." Victoria kept her voice light but firm. "I wouldn't miss this event for anything. You know how much this cause means to me." Other guests began to approach, forming a small circle around Victoria. Greetings and compliments flowed, but she noticed the furtive glances, the confused expressions. Everyone had seen Gregory arrive earlier with another woman. Everyone had believed the story of the sick wife at home. Margaret remained by her side like a silent bodyguard, while Marcus discreetly moved away to coordinate the details of the planned announcement. Victoria accepted each greeting with elegance, her hand occasionally resting on her belly in an unconscious gesture that emphasized her imminent motherhood instead of hiding it. "Shall we go in?" Margaret suggested after a few minutes. "Dinner must be being served by now." Victoria agreed, and together they began to walk towards the double doors that led to the grand ballroom. The historic Charleston Hotel was a jewel of Southern architecture, with its high ceilings adorned with elaborate frescoes and crystal chandeliers that cast dancing patterns of light upon the guests. The main hall was packed, with over 300 people dressed in their finest attire, circulating among tables decorated with extravagant floral arrangements. Victoria's entrance did not go unnoticed. Like a wave, conversations died down as people noticed her. Silence spread through the hall in concentric ripples until it seemed the very air had frozen. All eyes were fixed on her, on how the midnight blue dress caught the light, on the dignity with which she moved despite her advanced pregnancy, on the serene but determined expression on her face. And then Victoria saw him. Gregory was near the bar, a glass of champagne in hand, Cassandra beside him in the red dress Margaret had mentioned. He had turned, noticing the sudden silence, and was now completely paralyzed, his face losing all color. The glass in his hand trembled visibly, champagne nearly spilling over the rim. Cassandra saw her too, and something crossed her face that Victoria identified as pure panic. The younger woman took an instinctive step away from Gregory, as if physical distance could somehow undo the obvious association between them. Victoria did not avert her gaze. She kept her head high and continued walking, accepting the arm Margaret offered more as a matter of elegance than necessity. She moved through the ballroom like a ship gliding through calm waters, aware of every gaze, every whisper, but refusing to show any discomfort. "Victoria." Gregory's voice reached her as she passed him. There was a note of desperation she had never heard before. What are you doing here?" She stopped, turning to face him with an expression of mild surprise, as if her presence were the most natural thing in the world. "I'm at the Charleston Children's Hospital Charity Gala, Gregory. Where else would I be? This is a cause we both supported, remember?" The deliberate use of the past tense did not go unnoticed. Gregory opened his mouth, then closed it, clearly at a loss for words. Beside him, Cassandra looked as if she wanted to disappear into the polished marble floor. "You said you were sick." The words came out weak, accusatory. Victoria tilted her head slightly. "No, darling. You said I was sick. I never agreed with that narrative." She let the words hang in the air for a moment before continuing. "But how rude of me. Aren't you going to introduce me to your companion?" The silence around them was now absolute. Nearby people had abandoned any pretense of not listening. All eyes were fixed on the small drama unfolding near the bar. Cassandra found her voice first, extending a trembling hand. "Cassandra Whitmore. I work with Gregory. He needed someone to represent the company's business interests tonight." Victoria accepted the hand briefly, noticing how cold and clammy it was. "How dedicated you are, sacrificing your Saturday night for business interests." There was a touch of irony in her voice that made it clear she knew exactly what was happening. "And wearing such a stunning dress just for networking. Impressive." Margaret coughed discreetly, hiding what was clearly a laugh. Cassandra withdrew her hand as if she'd been burned, her cheeks now red enough to match her dress. "We need to talk." Gregory found his voice, gripping Victoria's arm harder than necessary. "In private." Victoria looked at his hand on her arm, then back at his face. "I don't think so. I'm here to enjoy the event and support a wonderful cause. If you wanted a private conversation, perhaps you should have thought of that before you left home this morning." She gently but firmly disengaged from his grip, then continued towards the table where Margaret was already guiding her. It was a prominent table near the stage, reserved for the main donors and board members. Victoria's rightful place, considering her work with the foundation. As she sat down, Victoria noticed that the entire atmosphere of the ballroom had shifted. Conversations gradually resumed, but now charged with a different energy. Curious glances were cast between her table and where Gregory remained, still looking shocked and disoriented. Cassandra had discreetly disappeared, likely seeking refuge in the ladies' room. "That was masterful," Margaret whispered, filling Victoria's glass with water. "You utterly destroyed him with just a few polite words." Victoria did not feel triumphant, however. Looking at the man she had once loved, now visibly crumbling across the room, she felt only a deep sadness. Not for him, but for what they had been, for the promise of a future that would never materialize, for the family she had imagined building. But there was also something new, a sense of liberation, as if invisible chains had been broken. She was no longer the complacent wife, waiting at home while being betrayed and robbed. She was Victoria Ashford, businesswoman, philanthropist, and soon-to-be mother. And she was reclaiming her place in the world on her own terms. Marcus appeared beside her, leaning in to whisper in her ear. "Everything is arranged. You'll be the last to make an announcement, after the other major donors are recognized. It'll be the perfect moment." Victoria nodded, her hand resting on her belly as she felt her son stir. It was as if he could feel the energy of the night, the importance of the moment. She thought of all the children the maternity center would help, all the mothers who would have access to care they otherwise couldn't afford. This was bigger than Gregory, bigger than his betrayal. It was about creating something meaningful, leaving a legacy her son could one day be proud of. Dinner began to be served, and Victoria forced herself to eat, aware that she needed to keep up her strength. Around her, people came to her table to greet her, each interaction strengthening her presence and making it impossible to ignore her participation in the event. Gregory remained notably distant, seated at a table at the back of the ballroom. Victoria occasionally saw him looking in her direction, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. She wondered what he was thinking, if there was any regret in his heart, or just anger at having his plans exposed. When desserts had been served and cleared, Eleanor Hastings ascended the stage, beginning the portion of the evening dedicated to recognizing donors. Victoria felt her heart quicken, her hands clenching the napkin in her lap. This was the moment that would change everything. Eleanor Hastings adjusted the microphone at the podium, her voice echoing softly through the now silent ballroom. Victoria watched from her privileged seat as the committee chairwoman began to thank the sponsors and donors who had made the event possible. Every word seemed to drag, time moving like thick molasses as Victoria awaited her moment. "Tonight we celebrate not only the generosity of our community, but the shared commitment to ensuring that every child in Charleston has access to the medical care they deserve." Eleanor gestured elegantly, her experience with public speaking evident in every calculated movement. We have some special announcements from our major donors that will make this a truly memorable evening. Victoria felt Margaret squeeze her hand under the table. Beside her, Marcus discreetly checked the documents in his brief, ensuring everything was in order. Across the ballroom, Victoria could see Gregory sitting rigidly in his chair, his fingers drumming nervously on the table. Cassandra had returned, but now maintained a noticeable distance from him, as if physical proximity could further incriminate her in the eyes of curious onlookers. The first donor was William Sutherland, owner of a chain of car dealerships, who announced a contribution of $250,000 for the pediatric wing. Polite applause filled the hall as he descended from the stage, greeting people along the way back to his table. Next came Patricia Montgomery, heiress to a real estate fortune, pledging $500,000 for state-of-the-art medical equipment. Cada anúncio elevava o nível, e Victoria podia sentir a antecipação crescendo no salão. Esta era a parte favorita da noite para muitos dos presentes, o momento de demonstrar riqueza e generosidade em igual medida, onde status social era medido não apenas em dólares, mas na disposição de exibi-los publicamente por uma boa causa. E agora? Eleanor fez uma pausa dramática, consultando suas anotações. Tenho o prazer de convidar ao palco alguém que tem sido instrumental no sucesso de nossos programas de alcance comunitário. Uma mulher cuja dedicação às crianças carentes de Charleston tem sido nada menos que exemplar. Por favor, recebam Victoria Ashford. O salão explodiu em aplausos, mais entusiasmados do que os anteriores. Victoria reconheceu a curiosidade por trás da ovação, todos querendo ver o que ela diria, como se portaria após a entrada dramática mais cedo. Ela se levantou com cuidado, consciente de cada olho fixo nela, e começou a caminhar em direção ao palco. Cada passo era deliberado, medido. O vestido azul meia-noite fluía ao seu redor como água, os bordados em prata capturando a luz dos lustres de cristal. Sua mão descansava levemente na barriga, não em um gesto de desconforto, mas de proteção e orgulho. Ela era uma mãe prestes a dar à luz, e não havia vergonha nisso, apenas poder e propósito. Ao passar pela mesa de Gregory, Victoria não olhou em sua direção. Não precisava. Podia sentir a tensão irradiando dele, imaginar o pânico crescendo conforme começava a entender o que estava prestes a acontecer. Ele conhecia os números da fundação, sabia quanto havia desviado. Devia estar calculando freneticamente, tentando descobrir se ela havia descoberto se este anúncio seria sua ruína pública. Victoria subiu os 3 degraus até o palco com a ajuda de um funcionário atencioso. Depois caminhou até o pódio, onde Eleanor a aguardava com um sorriso caloroso. As duas mulheres se abraçaram brevemente antes de Eleanor ceder o microfone e descer, deixando Victoria sozinha sob os holofotes. Por um momento, Victoria apenas ficou ali, permitindo que o silêncio se estabelecesse. Seus olhos varreram o salão, fazendo contato visual com rostos familiares, pessoas que ela conhecia há anos, cujas vidas se entrelaçavam com a sua através de incontáveis eventos sociais e iniciativas comunitárias. Estas eram suas pessoas, sua comunidade, e ela não permitiria que a traição de Gregory a afastasse delas. Boa noite. Sua voz saiu clara e firme, amplificada pelo sistema de som. Quando acordei esta manhã, não tinha certeza se conseguiria estar aqui esta noite. Não por razões médicas, como alguns podem ter ouvido. Ela fez uma pausa, permitindo que um leve sorriso tocasse seus lábios, mas porque estava questionando meu lugar nesta comunidade que tanto amo. Victoria viu várias pessoas se inclinarem para a frente em suas cadeiras, completamente envolvidas. Na periferia de sua visão, ela notou Gregory ficando pálido. A gravidez muda uma mulher de maneiras que vão muito além do físico. Ela transforma nossa perspectiva, nossas prioridades, nossa compreensão do que realmente importa. Nos últimos meses, tive que enfrentar verdades difíceis sobre relacionamentos que acreditava serem sólidos, sobre pessoas que pensei que me valorizavam. Sua mão acariciou a barriga levemente. Mas também descobri forças que não sabia possuir e um amor mais profundo do que imaginei ser possível. O silêncio no salão era absoluto. Victoria podia ouvir sua própria respiração no microfone, sentir o peso de centenas de olhos fixos nela. Mas não havia medo, apenas clareza. Esta fundação que ajudei a criar 3 anos atrás nasceu de um sonho simples: garantir que nenhuma criança em Charleston fosse privada de cuidados essenciais por falta de recursos. Trabalhamos incansavelmente, todos nós. Ela gesticulou para o salão, incluindo os doadores e voluntários, para tornar esse sonho realidade. Construímos 3 centros comunitários, oferecemos milhares de consultas médicas gratuitas, vacinamos crianças que de outra forma não teriam acesso. Victoria fez uma pausa, permitindo que o orgulho coletivo por essas conquistas preenchesse o espaço. Viu cabeças acenando, sorrisos de aprovação. Estas eram realizações que todos haviam contribuído para alcançar. Mas há um projeto que tem estado próximo ao meu coração desde que descobri que estava esperando meu filho. Um centro de maternidade dedicado a fornecer cuidados pré-natais e pós-parto para mães de baixa renda. Um lugar onde mulheres como eu, mas sem os recursos que tenho, possam receber o apoio que merecem durante a jornada mais transformadora de suas vidas. Victoria notou várias mulheres no público secando lágrimas, tocadas pela paixão em sua voz. Ela respirou fundo, preparando-se para o próximo momento crucial. Infelizmente, descobri recentemente que os fundos que havíamos arrecadado para este projeto foram desviados. $2 milhões que deveriam ter construído o centro simplesmente desapareceram. Um murmúrio chocado atravessou o salão. Victoria viu Gregory se levantar abruptamente, seu rosto agora vermelho. Não vou entrar em detalhes esta noite sobre como ou por quem isso aconteceu. As autoridades apropriadas estão investigando e confio que a justiça será feita. O salão explodiu em conversas baixas, cabeças se virando para olhar em todas as direções, tentando identificar o culpado. Marcos havia feito seu trabalho bem, garantindo que todos soubessem que Gregory era co-diretor da fundação, tornando as implicações óbvias para qualquer um prestando atenção. Victoria ergueu a mão, pedindo silêncio. Mas não estou aqui esta noite para focar no que foi perdido. Estou aqui para garantir que o sonho do centro de maternidade se torne realidade, independentemente dos obstáculos. Ela fez uma pausa, deixando a antecipação crescer. Por isso, tenho o prazer de anunciar uma doação pessoal de $5 milhões para a construção e operação do centro de maternidade Ashford. Por um momento, houve silêncio absoluto enquanto as mentes processavam o número. $5 milhões. Era mais do que o dobro do que havia sido roubado. Mais do que qualquer doação individual na história do evento. Então o salão irrompeu em aplausos ensurdecedores, pessoas se levantando de suas cadeiras em uma ovação espontânea. Victoria aguardou que a comoção diminuísse antes de continuar, suas palavras finais cuidadosamente escolhidas. Dedico esta doação ao meu filho que está para nascer, na esperança de que ele cresça em um mundo onde cuidamos uns dos outros, onde protegemos os mais vulneráveis e onde nunca permitimos que o egoísmo de poucos destrua os sonhos de muitos. Que o centro de maternidade Ashford seja um farol de esperança para todas as mães que precisam de apoio, lembrando-as de que são fortes, valiosas e merecedoras de dignidade em cada etapa de sua jornada. Os aplausos recomeçaram, ainda mais intensos. Victoria viu Margaret de pé, lágrimas escorrendo livremente pelo rosto de sua amiga. Marcos acenava com aprovação, sua pasta de documentos segura sob o braço. Ao redor do salão, pessoas se levantavam, aplaudindo não apenas a doação, mas a coragem, a graça sob pressão, a recusa em ser diminuída ou escondida. Mas Victoria procurou apenas um rosto. Gregory permanecia sentado, isolado em um mar de pessoas em pé, seu rosto uma máscara de horror e derrota. Cassandra havia desaparecido completamente, sua cadeira vazia como um testemunho silencioso de sua cumplicidade e covardia. Ele finalmente ergueu os olhos, encontrando os de Victoria através da distância. E naquele momento, ambos entenderam que tudo havia mudado irrevogavelmente. Victoria desceu do palco sob uma chuva contínua de aplausos, aceita em abraços por Eleanor e outros membros do conselho. Pessoas se aproximavam de todos os lados, querendo cumprimentá-la, elogiá-la, associar-se a este momento de triunfo. Ela aceitava cada interação com graça, mesmo enquanto sentia a fadiga começar a pesar em seus membros. Quando finalmente conseguiu retornar à sua mesa, Margaret a envolveu em um abraço apertado. Você foi perfeita. Absolutamente perfeita. Marcus estava sorrindo amplamente. Algo raro para o advogado normalmente sério. Os documentos estão todos arquivados. A doação é oficial e já tenho 3 repórteres pedindo entrevistas sobre o anúncio. Victoria afundou em sua cadeira, permitindo-se finalmente relaxar. Seu filho chutou vigorosamente, como se estivesse celebrando também, e ela não pôde evitar um sorriso. Havia feito isso. Não apenas confrontar Gregory e reclamar a seu lugar, mas garantira que algo bom, algo duradouro, nasceria desta noite de revelações. Através do salão, ela viu Gregory se levantar e caminhar rapidamente em direção à saída, incapaz de enfrentar as consequências de suas ações sob os olhares de todos que agora sabiam da verdade. Victoria sentiu uma pontada de algo que poderia ter sido pena, mas foi rapidamente substituída por uma sensação de libertação. Ela estava livre. A luz da manhã seguinte encontrou Victoria sentada na varanda de sua mansão em Battery Street, uma xícara de chá de camomila esfriando entre suas mãos. Ela havia dormido pouco, seu corpo exausto da noite anterior, mas sua mente recusando-se a descansar. As horas após o gala haviam sido um turbilhão de emoções que ainda processava, cada momento se repetindo em sua memória como cenas de um filme que assistira, mas não conseguia acreditar que protagonizara. Gregory não voltara para casa, nem ligara. O silêncio dele era ensurdecedor, uma confirmação final de que o casamento que ela tentara salvar já estava morto há meses, talvez anos. Victoria tocou a barriga, sentindo o bebê se mexer com seus primeiros movimentos matinais e se perguntou como explicaria tudo isso ao filho quando crescesse. Como descreveria o pai que o abandonara antes mesmo de nascer. O telefone ao seu lado vibrou pela 20ª vez naquela manhã. Victoria olhou para a tela, vendo mais mensagens chegando em ondas constantes. Algumas eram de apoio, de amigos genuínos chocados com as revelações da noite anterior. Outras eram curiosas, disfarçadas de preocupação, mas claramente buscando detalhes suculentos para alimentar a máquina de fofocas que era a alta sociedade de Charleston. E havia aquelas poucas mensagens hostis de pessoas que viam sua exposição pública de Gregory como uma traição às normas não escritas de sua classe social, onde problemas matrimoniais deveriam ser resolvidos discretamente, longe de olhares indiscretos. Victoria ignorou todas elas. Não tinha energia para performances sociais esta manhã, para escolher palavras cuidadosamente e manter aparências. Pela primeira vez em sua vida adulta, permitiu-se simplesmente existir sem se preocupar com o que outros pensariam. O som de um carro na entrada a tirou de seus pensamentos. Victoria se levantou com dificuldade, caminhando até a janela para ver quem chegava tão cedo. Um sedã preto que reconheceu imediatamente como pertencente a Marcus parou em frente à casa. O advogado saiu, seguido por uma mulher que Victoria não reconheceu, vestida formalmente com uma pasta executiva debaixo do braço. Momentos depois, a campainha tocou. Victoria abriu a porta para encontrar Marcus com uma expressão séria, mas não desagradável. Desculpe aparecer sem avisar, ele disse, mas há desenvolvimentos que precisam de sua atenção imediata. Esta é Diane Foster, investigadora financeira que contratei para examinar mais profundamente as finanças da fundação. Victoria os convidou a entrar, guiando-os até a sala de estar onde se sentaram ao redor da mesa de centro. Diane abriu sua pasta, revelando pilhas de documentos e planilhas que fizeram a cabeça de Victoria doer só de olhar. Senhora Ashford, Diane começou, sua voz profissional mais gentil. Trabalhei a noite toda analisando os registros que Marcus me forneceu. O que descobrimos vai além do desvio inicial que identificamos. Gregory foi sistemático e cuidadoso, mas também arrogante. Ele deixou rastros que alguém com conhecimento adequado poderia seguir. Victoria sentiu seu estômago apertar. Quanto? Quanto no total ele desviou? Diane trocou um olhar com Marcus antes de responder. US$ 3,5 milhões ao longo de 2 anos. As transferências começaram pequenas, testando se seriam notadas. Quando não foram, ele ficou mais ousado. O número deixou Victoria tonta. 3,5 milhões. Quase metade de tudo que haviam arrecadado desde a fundação da organização. Quantas crianças poderiam ter sido ajudadas com esse dinheiro? Quantas vidas melhoradas? Para onde foi? Victoria ouviu sua própria voz como se viesse de muito longe. Múltiplas contas offshore, todas eventualmente fluindo para uma conta principal nas Ilhas Cayman. Mas aqui está a parte interessante. Diane deslizou outro documento pela mesa. A conta tem 2 titulares, Gregory Ashford e Cassandra Whitmore. Victoria absorveu essa informação em silêncio. Então não era apenas um caso. Era uma parceria, planejada e executada com frieza calculada. Eles haviam roubado juntos, conspirado juntos, construído um futuro juntos com dinheiro roubado de crianças vulneráveis. Há mais. Marcus se inclinou para a frente, sua expressão sombria. Gregory contatou um advogado de divórcio ontem à noite, logo após deixar o gala. Ele está preparando papéis que o retratam como vítima de um casamento abusivo, alegando que você o controlava financeiramente e o isolava socialmente. E Victoria teria rido se a situação não fosse tão absurda e dolorosa. Ele está tentando se fazer de vítima? Depois de tudo que fez? É uma estratégia comum, Diane explicou. Atacar primeiro, controlar a narrativa. Se ele conseguir convencer um juiz de que foi coagido ou manipulado, pode potencialmente reduzir sua responsabilidade criminal e proteger seus ativos no divórcio. Victoria se levantou, caminhando até a janela que dava para o jardim. As rosas que plantara na primavera estavam florescendo, manchas vibrantes de vermelho e amarelo contra o verde exuberante. Ela as observou balançando suavemente na brisa matinal, encontrando uma calma estranha em sua simplicidade. Rosas não traíam, não mentiam, não roubavam de crianças inocentes. "O que você recomenda?" perguntou sem se virar. Marcus se juntou a ela na janela. "Processamos, tanto criminalmente quanto civilmente. O que ele fez é fraude clara, desvio de fundos de caridade. Com as evidências que Diane reuniu, temos um caso sólido. Ele vai enfrentar tempo de prisão, sem dúvida. E Cassandra? Ela é cúmplice. Também enfrentará acusações. O fato de a conta estar em nome dela torna isso inequívoco." Victoria fechou os olhos, sentindo o peso da decisão que precisava tomar. Processar Gregory significava tornar tudo público, arrastar o nome Ashford pela lama, expor os detalhes sórdidos de seu casamento fracassado para escrutínio público. Mas também significava justiça para as crianças roubadas. Significava enviar uma mensagem clara de que tais ações tinham consequências. "Faça o que for necessário", ela disse finalmente. "Processe, por tudo, mas com uma condição." Marcus ergueu uma sobrancelha. "Qual?" "Todo o dinheiro recuperado vai diretamente para a fundação, especificamente para o centro de maternidade, e para compensar os projetos que foram atrasados por causa do roubo dele. Não quero 1 centavo para mim." "Victoria?" Marcus tocou seu ombro gentilmente. "Você tem direito à compensação. Ele te enganou, roubou de você também." "Eu sei, mas isso não é sobre dinheiro." "Nunca foi." Victoria virou-se para encará-lo, sua determinação clara em seus olhos. "É sobre garantir que o bem que pretendíamos fazer ainda aconteça. Gregory pode ter roubado fundos, mas não vai roubar o propósito." Diane assentiu com aprovação, fechando sua pasta. "Vou precisar de sua assinatura em alguns documentos para prosseguir com a investigação oficial. E você deve estar preparada para a reação dele. Homens como Gregory raramente aceitam consequências sem lutar." Como se invocado por suas palavras, o telefone de Victoria tocou. Ela olhou para a tela, vendo o nome de Gregory piscando. Por um momento considerou ignorar, mas algo a fez atender. Talvez curiosidade sobre o que ele poderia possivelmente dizer. Talvez uma necessidade de fechamento. "Victoria." A voz dele era diferente, despida da arrogância usual. Havia pânico nela, desespero. "Precisamos conversar, por favor. Me dê uma chance de explicar." Explicar o quê? Exatamente. Victoria manteve sua voz calma, consciente de Marcos e Diane observando. Como você roubou 3,5 milhões de crianças necessitadas? Como conspirou com sua amante para construir uma vida nova enquanto me humilhava? Estou curiosa para ouvir qual explicação você preparou. Silêncio do outro lado da linha. Então, mais baixo. Você sabia? Ontem à noite, quando fez aquele anúncio, você já sabia de tudo? Não de tudo, mas o suficiente. Victoria caminhou de volta para o sofá, sentando-se cuidadosamente. O suficiente para saber que o homem com quem me casei não existe mais, se é que algum dia existiu. Eu posso devolver o dinheiro. As palavras saíram rápidas, desesperadas. Todo ele. Apenas não envolva as autoridades. Pense no que isso fará à reputação da fundação, ao seu nome. Victoria quase sentiu pena dele. Quase. Minha reputação vai sobreviver à verdade, Gregory. A sua não. E a fundação será mais forte por ter exposto a corrupção em vez de encobri-la. Pessoas respeitam integridade. Victoria, por favor. Agora havia lágrimas em sua voz. Reais ou fabricadas, ela não conseguia dizer. Estou pedindo, como o pai do seu filho. Não destrua nossa família assim. A menção ao bebê acendeu algo em Victoria, não a compaixão que Gregory esperava, mas raiva pura e cristalina. Você destruiu nossa família no momento em que decidiu que eu era uma vergonha por estar carregando seu filho. Você a destruiu quando escolheu roubar de crianças vulneráveis para financiar seu caso. Eu estou apenas recusando a esconder a destruição que você causou. Eles vão me prender. A voz dele quebrou. Você entende isso? Vou para a prisão. Minha carreira, minha vida, tudo acabado. Consequências, Gregory. Você as criou. Agora vive com elas. Victoria desligou antes que ele pudesse responder, suas mãos tremendo apenas ligeiramente enquanto colocava o telefone de lado. Marcos a observava com algo parecido com admiração. Isso foi difícil para você. Sim. Victoria não viu sentido em mentir. Mas necessário. Ele precisa entender que não há negociação, não há rota de fuga fácil desta vez. Diane colocou os documentos que precisavam de assinatura sobre a mesa. Victoria os leu cuidadosamente, cada parágrafo tornando a situação mais real, mais final. Sua assinatura em cada página era um prego no caixão de seu casamento, mas também um passo em direção à justiça. Quando os visitantes finalmente partiram, prometendo mantê-la informada de cada desenvolvimento, Victoria se permitiu um momento de fraqueza. Sentou-se no chão da sala de estar, suas costas apoiadas no sofá, e chorou. Não por Gregory, não pelo casamento, mas pelo futuro que havia imaginado e que nunca existiria. Pelo pai que seu filho não teria, pela família que se fragmentara antes mesmo de se formar completamente. O bebê chutou forte, como se estivesse lembrando-a de sua presença. Victoria colocou ambas as mãos na barriga, sentindo os movimentos de seu filho, e encontrou força na vida que carregava. Ela seria suficiente. Teria que ser. Mãe e pai, protetora e provedora. Tudo o que esta criança precisaria. Margaret chegou ao meio-dia, trazendo comida caseira e a presença reconfortante que apenas uma amiga verdadeira podia oferecer. Elas se sentaram juntas na cozinha, Victoria beliscando uma salada enquanto Margaret relatava as reverberações sociais da noite anterior. Charleston não fala de outra coisa, Margaret disse, servindo chá. Metade das pessoas está te canonizando, a outra metade está escandalizando que você expôs Gregory publicamente. Mas mesmo os críticos não podem negar a generosidade da sua doação ou a coragem que mostrou. Victoria mexeu na salada sem muito apetite. Não fiz isso por coragem. Fiz porque não conseguia mais viver a mentira. E isso, Margaret pegou sua mão através da mesa, é exatamente o que torna corajoso. Quando a tarde se transformou em noite, Victoria finalmente se permitiu descansar. Subiu para o quarto que em breve transformaria em berçário, observando os planos que havia feito, as cores que escolhera, os móveis que encomendara. Tudo ainda intocado, esperando a chegada de uma nova vida que mudaria tudo. Ela se deitou na cama, uma mão descansando na barriga, e pela primeira vez em meses, sentiu algo parecido com paz. O caminho à frente seria difícil, ela sabia. Haveria batalhas legais, julgamentos sociais, noites solitárias. Mas também haveria seu filho, a fundação reconstruída, uma vida vivida com integridade em vez de mentiras convenientes. E talvez, apenas talvez, isso fosse suficiente. A semana seguinte trouxe mudanças que Victoria nunca antecipara. A história se espalhou além dos limites de Charleston, capturada por jornalistas e blogueiros que transformaram seu gesto de dignidade em manchetes sensacionalistas. Esposa grávida, expõe marido infiel em gala de caridade, proclamavam os títulos acompanhados de fotos dela no vestido azul meia-noite, a barriga proeminente desafiando a narrativa de vergonha que Gregory tentara impor. Victoria permanecia em casa na maior parte do tempo, protegendo-se do circo midiático que se instalara na Battery Street. Repórteres acampavam do lado de fora dos portões da mansão, suas câmeras prontas para capturar qualquer movimento. Ela os observava da janela do segundo andar, pequenas figuras determinadas a transformar sua dor em entretenimento público. O telefone tocava incessantemente. Produtores de programas matinais querendo entrevistas exclusivas, editores oferecendo contratos de livros, até um agente de Hollywood sugerindo que sua história seria perfeita para um filme dramático. Victoria recusava tudo educadamente quando se dava ao trabalho de atender. Sua vida não era produto para consumo, não importava quanto oferecessem. Marcos chegava diariamente com atualizações sobre os processos. Gregory havia sido formalmente acusado de desvio de fundos de caridade e fraude, com audiência preliminar marcada para a semana seguinte. Cassandra também enfrentava acusações, embora seu advogado estivesse tentando negociar um acordo argumentando que ela fora manipulada por Gregory. Victoria duvidava disso, lembrando-se da confiança com que a mulher entrara em sua casa naquela manhã fatídica. Margaret tornara-se sua âncora, aparecendo todas as tardes com comida fresca e conversas que nada tinham a ver com escândalos ou processos. Elas falavam sobre o bebê, sobre nomes que Victoria considerava, sobre planos para o berçário que finalmente começara a decorar. Nesses momentos, a vida parecia quase normal, como se o mundo exterior não estivesse desmoronando ao seu redor. Foi durante uma dessas visitas que Margaret trouxe notícias inesperadas. Sentaram-se no solário, onde Victoria passava a maior parte das tardes, cercada por plantas que cultivava e livros que finalmente tinha tempo para ler. Recebi um telefonema interessante hoje. Margaret começou, seu tom cuidadoso. De Amanda Hartwell. Você se lembra dela? Victoria franziu a testa, procurando o nome na memória. A repórter investigativa, aquela que expôs o escândalo da Câmara de Comércio há alguns anos? Exatamente. Ela quer fazer uma matéria sobre você, mas não o tipo sensacionalista que as outras publicações estão fazendo. Ela quer contar a história real sobre mulheres que enfrentam abuso financeiro em relacionamentos, usando seu caso como exemplo de coragem e recuperação. Victoria tomou um gole de chá, considerando. Havia recusado tantas entrevistas, determinada a manter alguma privacidade. Mas talvez houvesse valor em compartilhar sua experiência se pudesse ajudar outras mulheres presas em situações similares. Quantas esposas permaneciam em silêncio enquanto maridos roubavam, traíam, diminuíam? Quantas acreditavam que não tinham escolha além de aceitar? Diga a ela que pensarei sobre isso, Victoria finalmente respondeu. Mas com condições. Nada sobre Gregory além do necessário para contexto. O foco deve estar em como mulheres podem identificar e escapar de abuso financeiro, não em alimentar o escândalo. Margaret sorriu, pegando seu telefone para enviar uma mensagem. Sabia que diria isso. É exatamente por isso que Amanda quer falar com você. Ela vê além do drama superficial. O bebê chutou forte naquele momento, como se estivesse oferecendo sua própria aprovação. Victoria acariciou a barriga, maravilhada com quão ativo seu filho se tornara. O médico dissera que poderia nascer a qualquer momento agora, que ela deveria estar preparada para corridas súbitas ao hospital. Sua mala já estava pronta no closet, equipada com tudo que as listas online diziam ser essencial para uma nova mãe. A ideia de dar à luz sozinha a aterrorizava nas horas quietas da noite. Não a dor física, mas o conhecimento de que Gregory não estaria lá, que seu filho entraria no mundo sem o pai presente. Ela tentava se convencer de que era melhor assim, que a ausência dele era preferível à presença envenenada que ele traria. Mas ainda doía, essa perda de um futuro imaginado. Naquela noite, incapaz de dormir, Victoria vagou pela mansão silenciosa. Seus passos ecoavam nos corredores vazios, lembrando-lhe de quão grande a casa era, quão projetada para uma família que agora nunca existiria. Ela parou no escritório de Gregory, a porta fechada desde que ele saíra há mais de uma semana. Hesitou. Depois empurrou a porta aberta. A sala estava exatamente como ele deixara. Papéis espalhados sobre a mesa, uma caneta Mont Blanc abandonada ao lado de uma xícara de café pela metade. Fotos deles emolduravam as paredes, mentiras congeladas no tempo. Victoria caminhou até a estante, observando os livros que Gregory colecionara, volumes sobre negócios e sucesso e conquista. Ela se perguntou se ele alguma vez lera algum deles ou se eram apenas cenário. Suas mãos deslizaram ao longo das lombadas até encontrar algo fora de lugar. Um livro de poesia, escondido entre tratados financeiros. Victoria o puxou, reconhecendo-o imediatamente. Pablo Neruda. O mesmo volume que Gregory usara para cortejá-la anos atrás, lendo versos sobre amor eterno sob as estrelas da Carolina do Sul. Ela abriu na página marcada, esperando encontrar um dos poemas que ele costumava recitar. Mas ao invés disso, descobriu uma carta, não endereçada a ela, mas a Cassandra. As palavras saltaram da página, cada uma pequena traição. Ele escrevera sobre amor, sobre liberdade, sobre finalmente poder ser ele mesmo sem as restrições de um casamento que nunca deveria ter acontecido. Victoria leu cada palavra, forçando-se a absorver a verdade completa. Gregory não a amara. Talvez nunca tivesse. Ela fora um acessório apropriado, uma esposa com as conexões certas e a aparência certa para complementar suas ambições. E quando ela deixou de servir a esse propósito, quando a gravidez a transformou em algo que ele considerava menos desejável, ele simplesmente a descartou. A carta caiu de suas mãos. Victoria se sentou no chão do escritório, cercada pelos resquícios de uma vida compartilhada que agora reconhecia como ilusão. As lágrimas vieram, mas não eram de perda. Eram de raiva pela mulher que fora, pela forma como permitira que Gregory definisse seu valor, pela quantidade de si mesma que sacrificara tentando ser suficiente para um homem que nunca a mereceu. Um movimento no jardim captou sua atenção. Victoria se levantou, caminhando até a janela. Lá, iluminada pela luz da lua, uma corça passava tranquilamente na grama perfeitamente cortada. O animal movia-se com graça despreocupada, alheio aos dramas humanos, focado apenas na simplicidade de existir. Victoria observou até a corça desaparecer nas sombras, deixando apenas a noite quieta. Havia algo reconfortante naquele momento. Um lembrete de que a vida continuava independentemente de traições pessoais, que o mundo seguia girando mesmo quando o dela parecia ter parado. Ela saiu do escritório, fechando a porta firmemente atrás de si. Não voltaria ali. Aquele espaço pertencia a um passado que não tinha mais poder sobre ela. Subiu para o quarto que transformara em santuário pessoal, onde nenhuma lembrança de Gregory permanecia. Paredes pintadas de lavanda suave, cortinas que filtravam a luz matinal em tons dourados, uma cama coberta com colchas que ela mesma escolhera. No berçário adjacente, o móbile que Margaret ajudara a pendurar girava lentamente na corrente de ar do sistema de aquecimento. Pequenos elefantes de prata dançavam em círculos silenciosos, esperando pela criança que logo os observaria com olhos curiosos. Victoria se sentou na cadeira de balanço, imaginando as noites que passaria ali, embalando seu filho para dormir, sussurrando histórias e promessas. Seu telefone vibrou. Uma mensagem de um número desconhecido. Victoria hesitou antes de abrir, temendo que fosse outro repórter persistente. Mas as palavras na tela a pegaram de surpresa. Victoria, É Rebecca Chen. Não sei se você se lembra de mim da fundação. Queria que soubesse que toda a equipe apoia você. O que Gregory fez foi imperdoável, mas sua coragem inspirou todos nós. O centro de maternidade vai ser incrível. Obrigada por não desistir de nós. More messages appeared as Victoria read. Others from the foundation's team. Volunteers. Even some of the families who had been helped by the programs. All expressing support, gratitude, admiration. Victoria hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words until they appeared, reminding her that she wasn't alone, that the work she'd done mattered, that her story resonated beyond her own privileged social circle. She responded to each message personally, grateful for the kindness when she might have found judgment. As she typed, she felt something shift within her. Not forgiveness for what Gregory had done, but a letting go of the expectations she had carried. He would not define the rest of her life. He would not tarnish the joy of becoming a mother. He would not destroy the good she had built. The baby kicked again, more insistently this time. Victoria placed both hands on her belly, feeling the movements that indicated vibrant life and growing impatience. It was so close now. Days, perhaps hours. And when her son arrived, Victoria would be ready, not as half of a broken couple, but as a whole woman, a complete mother, a resilient person who had faced storms and emerged stronger. She returned to bed, snuggled under the covers, and for the first time since the gala night, she slept deeply. No dreams of Gregory, no anxieties about the future, just well-deserved rest and hard-won peace. The pain began at 3 a.m, a deep clenching that pulled Victoria from sleep. She lay still for a moment, breathing through the contraction, her hands instinctively finding her hardened belly. When it passed, she looked at the clock, timing it as the doctor had instructed. 15 minutes later, another wave came, more intense than the first. It was time. Victoria called Margaret, her voice surprisingly calm considering the whirlwind of emotions within her. Her friend arrived in less than 20 minutes, still in pajamas under her coat, her hair disheveled, but her eyes alert and focused. "Can you walk?" Margaret picked up the already packed bag as Victoria carefully got out of bed. Yes, they're still spaced out. Another contraction interrupted her mid-sentence. Victoria leaned on the dresser, breathing through the pain with a determination that surprised them both. The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of nighttime traffic lights and empty streets. Charleston slept, oblivious to the fact that a life was about to enter the world. Victoria watched the city through the window, thinking about how everything had changed since that day in Gregory's office, when she'd discovered the first evidence of his betrayal. It felt like an eternity, though only weeks had passed. Charleston Maternity Hospital received her with the quiet efficiency that characterized the silent hours of early morning. Nurses guided her to a labor room decorated to feel less clinical, with soft lighting and walls in comforting shades of mint green. Margaret remained by her side as the medical team prepared her, monitoring the baby, checking dilation, explaining what to expect in the coming hours. "Do you want me to try calling Gregory?" Margaret asked hesitantly when they were alone. "He's still the father. He deserves to know." Victoria considered for a long moment. Part of her, the part that still remembered the man she had loved, wanted to say yes. But that man no longer existed, if he ever truly had. The real Gregory was facing criminal charges, fabricating lies about abuse to protect himself, planning a future with stolen money and another woman. No. Her voice was firm. He made his choice. He won't turn this moment into something about him. The hours that followed tested Victoria in ways she had never imagined. The pain intensified in closer and closer waves, consuming her entire being until nothing existed but the primal need to bring her child into the world. Margaret held her hand, whispering encouragement, wiping the sweat from her brow. The midwife, a Jamaican woman named Claudette with a melodious voice and gentle hands, guided her through each contraction with wisdom, born of decades helping babies into the world. "You are stronger than you think," Claudette would say whenever Victoria questioned if she could continue. Your body knows what to do. Trust it. And Victoria trusted. She trusted when the pain became unbearable, when every muscle screamed for relief, when it seemed impossible to go on. She thought of all the women who came before her, all the mothers who endured this to bring life into the world. She thought of the low-income mothers the maternity center would help, those who would face this without the resources and comforts she had. She found strength in that connection, in that invisible thread that linked all women through the universal experience of birth. As dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, Claudette's voice changed, becoming more urgent. It's time to push, dear. Your baby is ready to meet his mother. Victoria pushed with all she had, channeling months of pain, betrayal, anger, and determination into pure physical effort. Margaret wept openly beside her, her hand being crushed in Victoria's grip, but without complaint. The room filled with sounds of encouragement, medical instructions, and then, finally, the sharp cry of a newborn. It's a boy! Claudette lifted the baby, still connected by the umbilical cord, and placed him immediately on Victoria's chest. A beautiful, healthy boy. Victoria looked at her son's face for the first time, and the world stopped. Everything she had lived through, everything she had suffered, every difficult choice and moment of doubt vanished before the absolute perfection of this tiny being. He had his eyes closed, his face red and crumpled, his tiny hands opening and closing. And he was hers. Completely, unquestionably hers. Hi, my love, she whispered, tears streaming freely. I am your mother, and I promise you will always be loved. You will always be cherished. You will always be enough. The next few hours passed in a haze of postpartum exams, attempts at breastfeeding, and a kind of exhaustion Victoria had never experienced. But intertwined with the fatigue was a pure joy that sustained her. She named her son Daniel, in honor of the father she had lost years ago, a man who had exemplified integrity and unconditional love. Margaret photographed everything, capturing Daniel's first moments in the world. Victoria feeding him for the first time, his tiny fingers wrapped around a strand of her hair. Victoria asleep with him on her chest, both exhausted but at peace. The baby nestled in his hospital bassinet, wrapped in a striped blanket, oblivious to the drama that had surrounded his birth. The sun was high when Victoria finally had a quiet moment alone with Daniel. The medical team had left after confirming both were well, and Margaret had gone to get coffee, giving them space. Victoria held her son, marveling at his weight in her arms, at how perfectly he fit against her. Your father isn't here, she said softly, feeling the need to acknowledge the absence, even though Daniel was too young to understand. And that will hurt sometimes. There will be questions I won't have good answers for. But I promise, Daniel, you will never doubt that you are loved. You will never feel that you are not enough. And you will grow up knowing that doing what is right matters more than keeping up appearances. The baby yawned, a tiny movement that made Victoria's heart melt. She watched him fall asleep, his tiny lips making sucking motions even in his dreams, and felt something settle within her. Purpose. Clarity. A deep understanding that every painful decision of the past weeks had led to this moment, preparing her to be the mother Daniel needed. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Victoria expected it to be Margaret returning, but instead, Marcus entered, carrying a bouquet of blue flowers and a large envelope. I hope I'm not interrupting, he said, approaching hesitantly. Margaret messaged me about the baby. I wanted to offer my congratulations in person. Victoria smiled, gesturing to the chair beside the bed. Meet Daniel. Marcus looked at the newborn with the awkward look of admiration that childless adults often have around babies. He's perfect, Victoria. Absolutely perfect. What's in the envelope? Victoria noticed the way he held it, as if it contained something important. Marcus hesitated before handing it over. The final divorce papers. Gregory signed this morning. He also formally renounced all parental rights. Victoria absorbed this information in silence. Part of her expected to feel something, pain or anger, or at least surprise. But there was only a calm void where those emotions should have been. Gregory had made his last choice, the final and irrevocable one. He had chosen to abandon not only her, but the son he would never know. "There's more," Marcus continued, his voice careful. As part of the plea agreement with the prosecution, Gregory agreed to return all the embezzled money. $3.5 million will be transferred back to the foundation in the coming weeks. He will serve 18 months in prison, followed by probation and community service hours. And Cassandra? 6 months and full restitution for her part. She's also fully cooperating with the investigation. Marcus placed the envelope on the nightstand. "It's over, Victoria. The legal part, at least. You are free." Free. The word echoed in her mind as Victoria looked at the baby in her arms. She was free from the lie of marriage, free from the constant betrayal, free from the burden of feeling inadequate. But more importantly, she was free to build the life she wanted, to raise her son according to values that truly mattered, to be authentic in ways she had never allowed herself before. When Marcus left, Victoria carefully stood and walked to the window, Daniel still safe in her arms. Below, Charleston was waking up to a new day. People walked the historic streets, heading to work, taking children to school, living lives that continued independently of personal dramas. And somewhere in that city was the land where the Ashford Maternity Center would be built, a tangible legacy that would endure for generations. "We're going to do amazing things together," she whispered to Daniel, her breath lightly fogging the glass. "We're going to build something that matters. And you're going to grow up knowing that you came from love, even if not the kind I originally imagined." The door opened again, and Margaret entered, carrying coffee and a radiant smile. "How's my favorite godson?" Victoria turned, and for the first time in months, felt a genuine smile light up her face. "He's perfect. We are perfect." And it was true. Not in the sense of a life without problems or a guaranteed future, but in the way that mattered. Victoria had her son, she had her integrity, she had the support of true friends, and the knowledge that she had survived storms that could have destroyed her. There were challenges ahead, she knew. Lonely nights and doubts about single motherhood, difficult explanations when Daniel was old enough to ask about his father, ongoing battles in the court of public opinion. But there was also joy. Daniel's first laugh, his first steps, his first day of school. There was the maternity center to complete, lives to impact, a legacy to build. There was the opportunity to show her son that strength didn't mean an absence of pain, but the courage to continue despite it. Victoria sat back on the hospital bed, Margaret taking the place beside her as both watched Daniel sleep. The morning sun streamed through the window, painting everything in golden light. And in that moment, surrounded by love and possibility, Victoria understood that she had not merely survived. She had transformed shame into dignity, betrayal into purpose, loss into renewal. The future stretched before her, uncertain but promising, and she was ready to embrace it, not as the broken woman Gregory had tried to make her, but as the resilient woman she had always been, just waiting for the right moment to emerge. A mother, a philanthropist, a survivor, a woman who refused to be defined by the cruelty of others and chose, instead, to define herself through her own strength and compassion. Daniel stirred in her arms, his eyes opening briefly to reveal blue irises that would eventually change color. He looked at her, truly saw her, and Victoria felt the full weight of the responsibility and privilege of motherhood. This tiny being depended completely on her, trusted her for everything, and she would not disappoint him. "Welcome to the world, my love," she whispered, kissing his tiny forehead. "It's going to be an incredible adventure."